Isn't it funny that we do things that are easy with no problem, right? But when it's hard, when it takes a lot of work and effort, if it's something that we don't really want to do, right, it's easy to just kind of shirk that and just miss that stuff. But the stuff that's easy, oh, sign me up. I'll knock all that out. So I got to ask you a question. Who wants to be a giant killer in this room? I know we got some giant killers watching online too, but guys, we want to be a giant killer, man. No more giant watching, right? We're done with that. If we're going to do that, if we're going to kill some giants, right, we got to learn from those that came before us. I was going back and forth. Where are we going to start it out, Lord? And he said, we got to start out in 1 Samuel 15. Saul, right, who winds up, we'll find out later in the story, he was a giant watcher, right? That's what we don't want to happen. So we can learn from him and some things that happened in his life and kind of be like, man, I don't want to do that. And here's some things that I want to do to avoid that, right? Samuel, he was a prophet. He's a strong man of God. God entrusted him to pick the leaders of the nation. He entrusted him to be a mentor, to be like kind of like a messenger, like God's telling him something and he's passing it on. So in other words, he's pouring into these leaders' lives, right? He's providing guidance and direction to them. And so God tells Samuel to tell the current king Saul that he needs to wage a war on the Amalekites and he needs to wipe everybody out. He needs to take them all out. And so God's instruction was pretty clear that basically, hey, we need to eradicate them. God's instruction was to take out every living thing. People, animals, all of them. Reason for that, the Amalekites had done some absolutely horrible things to the Israelites in the past, right? And for whatever reason, maybe some of the stuff we'll have to ask God later, but God's instruction was to take them all out. It was very clear and specific, right? So Samuel was the one that passed that information on to King Saul. Saul listens, he gets all the soldiers together and he attacks them, but he didn't quite do it in the manner that God wanted him to do it in. And we got to ask ourselves why, like what was going on, what happened. Apparently he didn't feel like following the instructions to a T. And so that's the first, I got 1 Samuel chapter 15 in the scriptures. Verse 9 says this, but Saul and the army, they spared Agag. Hopefully I'm saying that right. That was the king. They spared the king and they spared the best of the sheep and the cattle, the fat calves and the lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak was totally destroyed. So we see that Saul didn't quite listen to what he was told, right? You see that? Like he was told to take everything out, but yet he leaves the king alive and all the good sheep, the good cattle, the fat calves, the lambs, all the, we'll call it the currency of that particular time. He left that alone too. And so it's interesting, the verbiage used is everything that was despised and weak, they totally destroyed. So he took out everything that was weak and easy, right? But killing a king, right, and all the healthy livestock, that was probably a little harder, right? He went for the weak, the easy stuff, but the hard things he kind of pulled back on. He didn't knock those out, right? And obviously, if you read the story more, his men were putting pressure on him to be able to keep all that livestock because, man, why are we going to kill this all? So we need to take this home with us because that was their currency of the day. That's like burning a bunch of money, right? You understand? Like we're not doing that. We're bringing all this stuff with us because we can use this, right? This is help our wealth. And so I got to look over that and I got to ask myself, why did Saul not follow through in some of these particular areas? And the first thing is I imagine it's probably really hard to kill a king, especially if you are one too, right? Like Saul was the king also. I'm sure he's like, man, I don't want anybody doing this to me. Maybe I should just let him slide and not put the sword to him. I imagine that since it was a hard task, that he also probably didn't feel like killing them. Right? It's probably really hard to tell your entire army, like, hey guys, y'all ain't keeping nothing for yourself. right? These are soldiers. These are guys that work for him. So could you imagine, like, just picture it, right? They're all saying, hey, Saul, we're taking all this with us so we can eat and we can get something out of this. Imagine having to tell all those guys that just fought for you, put it all back. Nobody's taking anything. They'd be mad, obviously, right? I'm sure that would be a very hard thing for him to do. Right? So he probably didn't feel like entering into some type of controversy. He didn't feel like getting into a conflict with all his men. So he kind of just let it ride and let them do whatever that they wanted to. Does that make sense? Isn't it funny that we do things that are easy with no problem, right? But when it's hard, when it takes a lot of work and effort, if it's something that we don't really want to do, right? It's easy to just kind of shirk that and just miss that stuff. But the stuff that's easy, oh, sign me up. I'll knock all that out. But the stuff that takes a lot of work, haven't you encountered some things in your life like you're just like thinking about it and it just seems like conquering Mount Everest, like the 40 things you got to do to get there, it just seems like overwhelming. So what happens when we start thinking like that? We don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like getting into that. I'm just going to bypass that and go do something easy. There's plenty of things in my life that I don't feel like doing. There are weeks, like including this one, to be real with you, that I didn't feel like writing a message and coming up here and preaching it. I'm just being honest, right? There are days where I do not feel like waking up. There's days when I don't feel like going to the gym. There's days when I don't feel like answering my phone. I don't know about y'all, I want to throw the phones in the lake sometimes. Just like give me a little break. Want me to be real honest with you? There's days where I don't feel like being nice to anybody. That just me or anybody else in here, right? That there's something that I learned a long time ago, and it's a principle that I pray that we all walk out of here with tonight. The greats, they do what needs to be done, whether they feel like it or not. The greats, they do what needs to be done, whether they feel like it or not. They don't just cross everything off the to-do list that is easy. They tackle the things that are hard, regardless of if they feel like doing it. And isn't it funny that most of the times, like, if we just start those hard things, like, don't you notice that once we get like a quarter or like a halfway through it, we're almost like so glad that we actually did it, right? It's like, man, like I was freaking out about this the whole entire time, but then I just started and I started doing it. And I'm like, hey, this wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. I actually kind of feel like doing it a little bit now, right? God, we can't let our feelings stop us from doing the things that we know God is calling us to do. No matter how hard or no matter what we feel like in that moment, we cannot let us stop us from doing the things that God is calling us to do. As unfortunately Saul had to learn the hard way. So in the story now, Saul didn't do what was asked of God. Samuel's now wondering, like, what is going on, man? You messed this one up big time. So Samuel says, I'm hunting you down, brother. Like, it seems like Samuel's trying to help him out before it goes too far in a bad direction. That's where we catch up to verse 12. So early in the morning, Samuel, he got up and he went to meet Saul, but he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor and has turned and gone on down to Gilgal. So think about that. So Samuel's trying to track down Saul. He goes there early in the morning to talk to him. He said, oh no, sorry, Saul took off and he had to build a huge monument in his honor on the way to wherever he was going next. He had to put a big statue up, right? Think about that. He couldn't meet up with the man of God that's been pouring into his life because he's too busy going around telling everybody how great he is and all the amazing things he just got accomplished, right? He's letting all the congratulations and the high fives to everybody go to his head, right? And now he thinks he's the best thing walking. Out there doing my thing. If you read the story of Saul, you'll see that happens multiple times to him, right? Now, Now, there's a fine line to every subject. That's why I love talking about fine line subjects. It seems like balance is always the answer, right? If we go too far to any one extreme, it's probably not a good thing. At some point, we gotta balance, right? We don't want to be like humble to the point where you got like your shoulders down and woe is me and nothing good ever happens. But you don't want to be too prideful to the other side, right? We got to find a middle ground to that. But here's probably the biggest downside about pride. At some point, if you let that go on in your life, it'll cause us to think that we're better than other people, right? It'll cause us to sort of kind of look down on others, like they're just not quite as good as us. They haven't accomplished what we accomplished. They haven't done the things that we've done, almost like a little bit of like they're less than, right? But if we're being honest tonight, we're gonna be honest in this message. Like, don't we love us some us? Right? Don't you some days you're like, man, I love me some me, right? Like don't we at times, like, who doesn't love to win, right? Like, who doesn't love to come out on top, right? Who doesn't love to have everyone know how great that we are? Like, somewhere along the way, you can try to say you're not prideful, but it pops up at certain times, right? But we got to talk about something. Is there a difference in pride and confidence? Absolutely. So we'll talk about that in a second here. But here are some things that giant killers do, that David did, that great people in the Bible did, that great people in current times do. The first thing is they don't have to put their opinions in on every single discussion. Every time a topic is brought up, they don't have to bring all their great extensive knowledge to the table and let someone know exactly everything that they know about that particular subject, right? They don't have to one-up everyone in their storytelling. They can let someone else have the better story. They don't have to tell something that's way better that they did, way better that they accomplished. You ready for this one? They don't always have to be right. Oh, man. They don't always have to be right. In fact, they are willing to leave a conversation allowing the other person to even think they are right. Even if they know that they're right, they can just let it slide for the sake of the argument and be like, hey man, that's cool. I disagree. We'll call it a day. Right? Why? Because they know something. Why would they do that? Because God promotes those who aren't always going around making sure everyone knows how great they are and how deserving of everyone's praise and admiration. You know, that person that flexes when they get the boss position. They got the leadership role in the house. Now all of a sudden everyone's gonna listen to me. They get that raise, they get that boss. Now all of a sudden their former co-workers, now it's like, oh, I'm running the show now. Y'all are gonna listen to me and make sure you know that I'm in charge. This is a quote from a book called Desiring God. It says, insecurity can manifest in pride as an underlying fear of an inadequacy, leading to an overemphasis on external validation and a need to project an image of superiority to compensate for internal doubts. Basically what he's saying is insecurity, it can manifest itself as pride and an underlying fear of inadequacy, right? That's where it all starts, leading to an overemphasis on external validation, meaning like, I gotta make sure everyone knows how great I am. I gotta make sure everyone knows that I'm in charge. They need that external from the outside, people congratulating them and high-fiving them, and a need to project an image of superiority to compensate for internal doubts. So what do, right? Again, I'm not talking about like, this isn't someone that's humble, doesn't walk around with their head down, shoulders slumped, oh, woe is me, I can't do anything right. Like, I don't want to, put myself out there. No, right? I want you to see something. Like, I want you to be confident, first of all. And there's something that can take place. We can have Godfidence instead of confidence. Right? Godfidence meaning that like, hey, like, I know that God created me for something special. Like, I know that God gave me gifts and talents. I know that God is going to help promote me in these certain areas and these certain places. So I don't need to tell everybody about it. right? But I'm going to walk around with that internal change that God's done in my life and be like, hey, how are you? I'm here. I can look you in the eye. I can do my job to the best of my ability. I can help you in some manner if you allow me to, whatever that looks like. Like, we got Godfidence, right? That's the way that all of us should be walking around. Not bragging and having to tell everyone how great I am, but just knowing, you know what? Like, God's got me, man. He's not gonna think of what he's brought us through up to this point.